Hey everybody, welcome to Author Talk. I'm Sarah Donovan, and today I am joined by Kacie Day, one of the generous, compassionate writers who has contributed a piece to the open education resource, Just YA. So we're here just to get to know Kacie and to listen to Kacie read their poem today. So welcome, Kacie. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me and for having me be part of the project. It's really, really awesome, and I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. Well, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, where you are in the world.
Yeah, so my name is Kacie. My writing name is Kacie Day. My full name is Kacie Kostelecki. I'm from Dickinson, North Dakota, and currently working at a church just as an administrator. Um, yeah, it's a small town over here.
How did you become a writer?
So I have been writing now professionally for I would say 6 to 8 years through different avenues. I'm also in the marketing world, um and I was doing uh a lot of like business consulting and things like that for a long time. I just relatively recently stepped away from that world, and I've been working in the church now and I really enjoy it. But professionally writing that in those avenues for a long time, doing like content creation and things like that. Writing poetry for a very long time, and I've had a few published works with poetry. But this is definitely one of my more proud things that I've ever done. I think I'm pretty proud of being part of this project and having something in a book that, it might actually help some kids to learn or to feel connected. And I think that that's just so powerful.
Well, how did you come to hear about this project?
So actually, Kristen Bartley Lenz, I have been working on publishing a book of poetry. And I went to a a seminar retreat type deal for writers in Minnesota. That's the closest that they come to here. So I had driven up and gone to that, and I was trying to get some reviews done. It's a little bit easier to publish when you have a few reviews and you have some say about if people are interested in the book or not. It gives you a little bit more validation. So I was looking for some reviews, and she had offered her services. So I had sent in my book to her, and she had read a few of the poems and got back to me. And I essentially had asked her for, I think, like a 15 minutes of her time, and we ended up talking for like a couple hours. So it was really cool. And she told me about this project, and she said that I should submit. So I did, and it's been really cool. I've been really excited to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. Kristen is her book is The Art of Holding On and Letting Go, and Kristen also has a piece in this book as well. But she's a great example of a very generous author community of people who've submitted here and elsewhere, and how she's willing to lift up other people. Like, it costs us nothing
Yeah.
to lift up one another, and she really follows that. And she and I have some similar backgrounds in social work, and we've connected through that as well. And her book, The Art of Holding On and Letting Go, was one that I shared in my classroom when I was teaching junior high. So I have connected with her over the years, and it's so great that how she has connected with you, and then she has brought you into this space with me and our readers as well. So that's so lovely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, she's fantastic.
that's great to hear. Well, so I'm glad that you're into poetry now, and I'm thrilled to hear about this collection that you have, and I want to hear more about it in just a few minutes. I wonder if you can do a little reading for us. So if you want to,
Yeah.
do you want
Yeah,
to
I would
read
love
and then
to.
tell us about your piece, or tell us about your piece and then read?
Maybe I'll preface it a little bit because then it kind of makes more sense as I'm reading, maybe.
Okay.
Um, but The Queen of Bees, I wrote this originally. I was kind of thinking about So North Dakota is like one of the top states for honey and bees. It's actually like a weird fact about us, but we have a lot of bees here. And so I've always grown up around them and known about them and understood kind of the weight that they hold, like ecologically. um, so that's really what this poem is about. It's talking about, I have this character, the Queen of Bees, in the poem, to kind of talk about what's happened with bees and how they're starting to, they're not dying out, but there's less and less and less bees. And it's just something that I think is so important that we are reminded of the impact that we have on the world and how much would change if they weren't around anymore. So that is the basis. And I will just go into it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The Queen of Bees. In the warm of spring, she'd sit in the valley, humming her lively tune. As she'd sway, the creatures would sashay, and they'd pray for the fruits of June. She would breathe in deep and breathe out life, all in time with circadian rhythm. Workers would bow down, revered her crown. They knew she was stronger with them. Together they'd fly all through the night, giving hope to the world surrounding. All whom they'd pass by would tip their hats with gratitude and admiration abounding. But as years went by, we forgot those who fly and stopped taking time to aid their endeavors. The flowers now die, and with their demise, the bees cannot fly whatsoever. And when the bees slow and hide from the cold, Queen Bee cannot keep up the fight. A millennium pact, careful balancing act, now faded in cool morning light. If Queen Bee is laid to rest upon great Earth's breast, the world as we know it is at stake. For when the Queen of Bee dies, we'll all realize we must give in order to take.
Thank you so much. As you revisit your poem, reading it aloud here, is there something that stands out to you, something that you notice different or strikes you in a different way?
Um, it's interesting when I go back and I revisit poems that I've written a while ago. This one I wrote maybe a little over a year ago. And so when you revisit it, there's always new things that kind of pop out, I guess, to you. So it's interesting, I think, just the ending of it, talking about when she's laid to rest, and how we won't know until it's too late that we should have given back.
Mm.
It's the part that gets me.
Yeah, I think, when I read, there's a couple different lenses that I come to as an educator, as a poet and as an educator and just as someone who enjoys and appreciates poetry, so I noticed the craft of how you set this up. And I think, think it's lovely, the like part one and part two and the contrasting, and also the personification, I think, is something that, teachers teach a lot, and we want to show the students what these are. And a lot of times we kind of get hung up on naming it, like naming this is personification or anthropomorphism or something like that, without thinking about why that matters, and or why poets might do it, or use this as a craft, as a tool in their craft. And I think it just feels so intimate, like it's like you come to show such love of Queen, and also the loss, right, as well. There's
Yeah.
such intimacy, and I think it's a way of making it feel more humanizing, which is the point, I think, when we personify, is that we want it to be grounded in humanity and the things that we can do to make it feel more connected to the
The
people and the
people.
places and the beings, So these are things that I think about, and I think about teachers reading this with students about what it can offer them as far as ideas for their own writing, but also a way of engaging with the world. That kind of strikes me a little bit too.
That's awesome. I guess so. And with poetry, I've been writing for so long, and I do a bunch of different styles, not to go on a tangent, but so I tend to like forget about the technical side sometimes. Like I'll do it, and then someone will be like, "Oh, it's really interesting how you formatted that," and I'm like, I wasn't even really thinking about it when I did it. I just did it naturally. But also, I mean, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. And I guess whenever I write, one of the things, and it's kind of cool because you can see a little bit of it here, but is I always try to write to every audience. And what I mean is I try to make it so that if you know absolutely nothing about poetry, and you just are reading it at a glance, and you're just for one time seeing it, that you can enjoy it for the picture and the quality and the story, and you can understand it just baseline value. And if you are into poetry and you like it and you like the technical stuff, you can then kind of pick it apart and dig into it a little bit more, and there's little golden nuggets for someone that likes that a little bit more too. So, yeah, it's cool. I think it's really neat that you brought that perspective and that side of it up, because I always try to do that with every poem I write, is give a little bit extra for people that want to dig in. But then it's important to me too that I don't lose people that might just glance at it, because I know most of the world, I'm not saying everybody, but like a good portion might just like glance at it once and not think about it, but they can still enjoy it.
I love that. I think that's so important. I'm glad that you brought it up too, because it's accessible. Like you want the poems to be accessible. And I also think, poets, we write from different places and for different reasons, and the words come out in fully formed and or land on a page in a specific way, and it looks how we need it to look. And other times we might move things around. And I think sometimes teachers of poetry get stuck up on saying like, what did the author intend, or what did the author mean, or trying to find some sort of right or correct reading, when in fact sometimes it is like an artistic choice, and it may not have like a metaphoric meaning intentionally. It just might
Right.
come out that way, and someone might be able to find that meaning as well. And I was also thinking like, what is literally about bees, yes, literally about queen bees, but also
Yeah.
other queens and other
Yeah.
communities. And
Other parts of life.
yes,
Yes. That's the other thing, is like, yes, the original idea, right? The inspiration was the fact that bees are starting to die out, and there's some things like that. But the poem, it's transverse. Like you can talk about all sorts of different things. It doesn't have to be bees. It could be different species. It could be just talking about life, like changes that we go through, and it could be the dying of an old self and the becoming of a new, but it's all about that give and take, and that we have to give um before we can take.
hmm
So
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, I think
thanks.
there's so much. Like it's a short, like these are short pieces, but they, here we are talking about it for 10 minutes, and we could probably go on and on, with it as well. And I think that's like the beauty of it. It can just be a reading that you enjoy and move on, and it could be something that you have a conversation about. And I think your piece in conversation with other poems and stories that are in that section are important to think about too, as a collection or as a whole, and how they're saying different things. Probably even that message comes across in several of the poems. Well,
Yeah.
I wonder if we could turn just a little bit to where you are, what you're working on now. So, what kind
Yeah.
of writing are you doing, or what's sort of next for you?
So I have a book that I'm currently working on. And I've pitched a couple places. It's gotten looked at, but I haven't gotten any offers yet. But Metamorphosis of Dreams, and it's actually about overcoming trauma. And so it's it's split into four sections, and it just kind of illustrates um, kind of like the violence and pain and things like that of a traumatic event, um, living in it, dealing with it, and overcoming it. And it's kind of like this grieving process almost, but it's just poems that take you through that whole journey. And it's mirrored after my own journey. I had kind of a very interesting childhood. Um, and there was some different things in there, but it talks a little bit about abuse, and I had a brief experience with a kidnapping, and it goes through all sorts of things. So it just kind of journeys through, and it's called Metamorphosis of Dreams because it talks about bringing your dreams and your hopes into reality. One of the things when I was going through my journey is I had to create hope a lot of time. Because sometimes you're just in a place where it's so dark and it seems like you're never gonna get out. And you can create hope in your mind and turn it into reality eventually. So that's what Metamorphosis of Dreams is about. Been working on that for a while, and now we're finally at the cusp of hopefully getting it published soon.
Well, congratulations. It sounds
Thank you.
like a wonderful, like an important project for you personally, and in sharing that with others, it will benefit other readers as well. I think like knowing where the collection goes toward is really helpful for readers who have experienced trauma to know that you're going to move toward hope,
Yeah.
and not re-traumatize the reader as they, are healing through the reading of it. And I think sometimes that little just summary and framing is really comforting for a reader to know, like, I want to talk about this too, or I want to understand my trauma better too, but I'm afraid of it hurting again, right? But
Yeah.
knowing that it's moving toward or through, um, or that you will take good care of the reader along the way is a comfort, I think.
Yes. Yeah. That is the one thing again, just with different types of poetry and things, but one thing I always try to include, even in some of the more traumatic type poems or dark or violent, um, is to always inside the poem include the hope and the clothes that makes you feel comfortable or can give you some comfort. I am not a huge shock writer or which is great. That's a great genre too, but it's a very comforting book, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be hopefully, I hope that it'll be very healing for people.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, we're kind of toward the end of our time now. I wonder if there's anything else that you want to share, or maybe your hope for your poem to be, open access, to be like readily available to teachers and students. If you, I don't have any words about that before we close.
Yeah, I'm just excited that it is open access. I think that so for me, one of the reasons that I'm actually going like the traditional publishing route anyway, period, with my own personal works is it's important to me that my poetry is available to kids who might not be able to purchase things. I would love to someday have my poems in a library because I want them accessible to children that that I was growing up. I grew up um, without access to a lot of things. The only way I would have ever been able to access my work would have been through a library. So I want my work to always be accessible to kids um, in that mean. So I guess when it comes to that, I just think that this project has been so fulfilling for me, and for the exposure that I'm able to have and the ability to connect to readers that really hit home for me, I think is phenomenal. And I've just been so excited to be part of this project.
Thank you so much, Kacie. It's been a joy to be with you.
Thank you.